Have you ever felt like God was asking you to do something impossible? In today's passage, the disciples are in that exact position. They are exhausted, surrounded by 5,000 hungry people, and Jesus looks them in the eye and gives a command that sounds ridiculous. You give them something to eat. Today, we'll explore why Jesus' ridiculous requests are actually invitations to a life of radical love and trust. But for now, let's get into the text. Mark chapter 6, verse 30 to 44. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. As he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. When it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now very late. Send them away so that they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy something for themselves to eat." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." They said to him, "Are we to go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat?" And he said to them, "How many loaves have you? Go and see." When they had found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then he ordered them to get all the people to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and of 50s. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to his disciples to set before the people, and he divided the 2 fish among them all. And all ate and were filled, and they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and of the fish. Those who had eaten the loaves numbered 5,000 men. While the author of Mark can be unusually brief in other accounts, such as Jesus being tempted by Satan in the wilderness and Jesus calling his first disciples, in today's passage, the author chose to include many numeric details. Those numbers include 200 denarii, 5 loaves, 2 fish, groups of hundreds and 50s, 12 baskets full of broken pieces of bread and fish, and 5,000 men who ate. Why is it important to know these specific numbers? What are they highlighting? In today's message, we will see that Jesus' call for his disciples is actually a call for them to love and to trust. Let's begin. It is easy to see that some of the numbers in this account are highlighting the problem at hand. Let's first look at the number of people being fed. The author wanted to let the readers know that 5,000 men was not an exaggeration. The mention of the people sitting in groups of hundreds and 50s points to the fact that 5,000 men was not an exaggeration, since they could be properly counted as they were seated in distinct organized groups. Next, let's talk about the cost. Taking this scenario into our modern day, if a simple meal costs $6 and you treat 5,000 people for such a meal, it will cost a total of $30,000. That is around half a year's wage for many North Americans. In Jesus' time, a denarius was around a day's wage for a worker, so 200 denarii was around half a year's wage. The numbers line up. When we compare the big numbers of $30,000 meal for 5,000 men with the pitiful 5 loaves and 2 fish, we can immediately see the magnitude of the problem at hand. This passage begins with the disciples coming back to report to Jesus about their mission. The disciples were probably tired and hungry themselves, but they did not fade into the background, but instead they participated heavily in the narrative. They initiated to dismiss the people so that they could go buy food. They announced the absurdity in the idea of feeding the people. They went to see how much food they have, and they got people to sit down in groups of hundreds and 50s. Not only were the disciples assisting Jesus in the process, In the middle of the narrative, Jesus said to the disciples, "You give them something to eat." Why did the author purposefully detail the disciples' involvement in this account? And why did Jesus pose such an unreasonable request to his disciples, knowing they did not have the ability to carry it out? In the following section, we will reveal the significance of the disciples' involvement in this narrative and why Jesus made such a ridiculous call to his disciples. In order to understand Jesus' request, the disciples would have to understand two important things about Jesus. Verse 34 says, "As he went ashore, he saw a great crowd and he had compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd." Notice that the author carefully described the people sitting down on green grass, which enhances the image of the people as sheep being cared for. Jesus is the compassionate and caring shepherd, and his request for his disciples, "You give them something to eat," was not simply asking the disciples to fulfill a task. Jesus was asking the disciples to show compassion to those he loves. Jesus wanted his disciples to know that their mission was not only to preach, to cast out demons, or to heal, but most importantly, it was a call to love. Aside from seeing their mission as a call to love, verse 42 also says, "And all ate and were filled." All 5,000 men were completely satisfied. But that's not all. When the disciples went around to pick up the leftovers, there were 12 baskets full of broken pieces left. In the beginning of creation, God made Adam and Eve, and he provided for them abundantly in the Garden of Eden with all kinds of trees pleasing to the eye and good for food. But because of the fall, humans no longer enjoy God's abundance. Being separated from God, humans experience scarcity and we doubt God's generosity. But through the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus shows that God's abundance is still possible if we trust in him with what we have. Jesus is capable of miracles and can take whatever we have to provide powerfully and generously for his people. When we understand Jesus' power and offer up all that we are and all that we have into his hands, then we can see that the call, "You give them something to eat," is also a call to trust in God's powerful and generous provision. After participating and witnessing this great miraculous feeding of 5,000 men, the disciples could look back later on and understand that although the mission Jesus left them with might seem impossible to achieve, it is God's hand that is behind bringing it about, and they would only need to love those they were called to and to trust the one who called them. The numbers in this passage at first glance seem to be highlighting the immensity of the problem, and in contrast, the irrationality for Jesus to say to his disciples, "You give them something to eat." But we discovered that Jesus was actually trying to mold his disciples' hearts. As the disciples came back to report all they had done and taught, Jesus reminded them that it was not the tasks that were the most important, but instead, it was their love towards Jesus' sheep and also their trust in Jesus' generous provision that should propel their mission onward. When we understand Jesus' compassion and power, the illogical call, "You give them something to eat," becomes Jesus' entrusting call to feed my sheep. At times, we might find that God has called us to something that is beyond our ability. This can be overwhelming and scare us, but this passage teaches us that it does not matter how big or small God's call is for you. What is most important is for us to focus on loving Jesus' sheep and trusting in Jesus' power and providence along the way. If you have a 5,000 people problem with only 5 loaves and 2 fish in your hand, remember, Jesus isn't looking for your ability to figure it out. He's looking for your trust in him. This lesson is just one piece of the puzzle. We are on a 40-part journey through the entire Gospel of Mark, and each chapter reveals a new layer of who Jesus is and what it means to follow him. If you missed the first 13 parts, I highly encourage you to watch the playlist from the beginning. Seeing how Jesus built his disciples' faith from day one will change how you feel your own walk with him. Thank you for studying with me today. I'll see you in the next video. Emmanuel, and God bless.